Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It is a great pleasure to be back again in Bhaktivedanta Manor amongst all of you. Continuing with our discussions on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the passage under consideration is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on the way back from the Jagannath temple, has come to the residence of Srila Rupa Goswami, which is Siddha Bakula. And at that time, Rupa Goswami isn't around, and Mahaprabhu sees a palm leaf on which something is written. That palm leaf has been placed on the thatched roof of the cottage in which Haridas Thakur used to reside. And as we have seen yesterday, this verse that Srila Rupa Goswami wrote was actually the purport or the explanation to a mysterious verse that used to be chanted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially at the time of the Rath Yatra. Nobody except Swarup Damodar could understand the meaning of this mysterious verse. But Rupa Goswami, who had arrived in Jagannath Puri, could understand the meaning. And therefore he wrote his explanation of that verse on the palm leaf. In those days, you didn't have books and papers and so on. So they would write with special types of pens made from wood or thorns. They would write on palm leaves. And you still have many such manuscripts stored in various places. So Rupa Goswami just tucked it under the lower part of the thatched roof, and he went to the sea to take his bath. And that is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived there. So he saw this, and he was really perplexed. And he read the verse, and just at that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered, or rather Rupa Goswami came there and offered his prostrated obeisances. So the first verse that we read today speaks about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to see the Upalabhoga ceremony at Jagannath temple. And as Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, that this is a special type of offering that is done in full public view, unlike other offerings to the deities which are done behind closed doors. We are not supposed to see the bhoga that is being offered by the pujari to the deities. So it's done all behind the curtains. And then only when it's all opened up, then we see it. Only on very special occasions is the food or the bhoga offered to the Lord in full public view. But there are certain types of offerings, as we can see here in Lord Jagannath's temple, where every day this offering is made in full public view. Now, Lord Jagannath's temple is a very special temple. And many of the customs there are quite unique. They're unlike that seen in any other temple. Although there are many common features because this is a Vaishnava temple, but there are many unique features not found elsewhere. So this Upalabhoga, as Prabhupada mentions here, is done on a stone slab. And that slab is behind the Garuda Stambha. Stambha means a pillar. Garuda, as you know, is the carrier of Lord Vishnu. So in most Vaishnava temples in India, traditionally you will find in front of the entrance of the temple, there is a pillar on top of which is seated Garuda. He is kneeling down and offering his obeisances with folded hands he faces the deities, the direction of the deities. So this is very commonly found. And so in Jagannath temple also there is the Garuda Stamba inside the temple. The temple itself has several sections. So in one section, which is at some distance from the altar, that is where this stamba or pillar is located. And this is important for us because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to take darshan of Lord Jagannath from this place. So Mahaprabhu used to see the Upalabhoga ceremony at the temple of Jagannath. And after seeing this, he would visit these three great personalities on his way to his residence. So which three personalities? Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. There are many offerings that are made to Lord Jagannath, 6 offerings every day. And the main offering is in the afternoon, Chappan Bhog, which means 56 items offered. And of course, it needs a separate discussion to talk about how the food is cooked in the Jagannath temple, what kind of kitchen facilities are available there, and then how it's offered, and how it finally becomes Mahaprasadam. It is said that Lakshmi Devi personally empowers there and she is present there. And you have these mud pots which are used only once. And once it has been used for cooking, then it's discarded. And a fresh pot is used each time. And to cook, you have several layers of pots put one on top of the other. And the pot that is on the top gets cooked first. So this is steam cooking that goes on. It's a very, almost a mystical type of cooking process that happens. It's huge. It's probably the largest cooking that happens anywhere on a daily basis. You have food that is cooked for almost 100,000 people. Now, to do that on a regular basis is something quite extraordinary. So there are many, many offerings. It is offered to Lord Jagannath. The entire thing is offered. And it still doesn't become Mahaprasadam till it is offered to Bimala Devi, who is none other than Yogamaya. So then actually it is Mahaprasadam. It's only then that this is distributed to everybody at the Ananda Bazaar. And there are various types. So it's a fascinating subject, this whole topic of the bhoga for Lord Jagannath. So in any case, starting from Gopala Vallabha Bhoga at 8:30 in the morning, which is the Lord's breakfast, going all the way up to the last offering, which is around 11 o'clock at night, Jagannath is fed sumptuously throughout the day. And there are very strict rules about what can be offered and what can't. So they won't offer ingredients that were not available in those days. They won't offer tomatoes and also so many items which are part of our regular diet. So they're very strict about that. And they're not so happy when in ISKCON temples we offer so many things to Lord Jagannath. We offer everything, including pizzas and all sorts of things. But in the Jagannath temple, they balk at the idea. If you ever tell this to one of the pandas, they're going to get upset. So in any case, so the Upala Bhoga offering was witnessed by Lord Chaitanya. Elsewhere also Kaviraj Goswami says that Mahaprabhu used to step outside the temple when the bhoga was being offered. So in any case, so then Mahaprabhu would go on to his own residence, and if any of these three personalities was not present, he would meet the others. That was his regular practice. Prabhura Niyama. Niyama means a rule or a practice. So Mahaprabhu had a daily routine, and he would strictly follow that routine. So even though he was in the highest platform of devotional service, because he's playing the role of a devotee, you can't get higher than that in Krishna consciousness. But still, even though his love for the Lord was so spontaneous and so intense, he still followed a routine. He didn't think that because now I am on such an elevated platform, I don't need to follow rules and regulations. Shri Shri Radha Gokulanand ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. So every morning, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to the temple of Lord Jagannath for darshan. And he would chant and dance in front of the deities. He would stand, as I mentioned earlier, at the Garuda Stamba. One reason for that is because it was less crowded at the back. In the front, there were huge crowds that would be milling around, and that would disturb him too much. So he would come at the back. And also another reason is that from his vantage point where he stood at the Garuda Stamba, he would have a very clear vision of the deities and especially of Lord Jagannath. So he would stand there sometimes leaning against the pillar or the wall, and there are imprints of his fingers, or the tips of his fingers on the pillar and the wall. And there are also imprints of his foot, of his lotus feet, his body on the floor just below, which would melt with ecstasy because of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bhava or mood. So he would stand there gazing at the Lord with rapt attention, his eyes never for even a fraction of a second leaving the lotus face of the deity. And he would stand there and gaze for a long time. There is a little pastime, a small pastime, that Srila Kaviraj Goswami mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That one time, when both Advaita Acharya and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were in the temple, Mahaprabhu jubilantly told Advaita Acharya, "I have defeated you, I have defeated you." So Advaita Acharya didn't have an idea what Mahaprabhu was talking about. So he said, "Yeah, you always defeat me, but what's the issue on this occasion?" So he said, "What did you do today after coming to the temple?" He said, "I had darshan of the Lord." Then what did you do? Then after taking darshan, I did the circumambulation of the temple, the parikrama of the temple. And that's the custom, that's the devotional practice. When you go to a temple of the Lord, you take darshan and then you circumambulate the temple 4 times. Actually, generally it's become a practice for us to do it 3 times, but actually, strictly speaking, whether it's Tulasi or the deities, we should circumambulate 4 times. But it's kind of become an established norm. So, well, it goes on. It's fine. So he circumambulated. So that's the rule, that you're supposed to circumambulate the deities. When the darshan is open, actually, strictly speaking, that's the time you should circumambulate. So Advaita Acharya said, "I circumambulated the deities." And he said, "Yes, so I won." So he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Look, for the time that you were circumambulating the deities, I was having darshan. I was just gazing and gazing at the Lord's lotus face, and you didn't get that darshan. You were just going round and round and round." So what Mahaprabhu is saying is not that we shouldn't circumambulate the deities. We should follow that rule. But what he is trying to emphasize is the ecstatic feelings that he was experiencing when he was gazing at the lotus face of Lord Jagannath. When Mahaprabhu saw Jagannath, he wasn't only seeing the form that we see with our eyes. The deity appears in a certain way. But when Mahaprabhu gazed at Lord Jagannath, he was actually seeing Lord Shyam Sundar playing the flute in Vrindavan. That was what Mahaprabhu would see, because he was in that mood of Srimati Radharani, in the mood of Vrindavan. And in his ecstasy, sometimes he would catch hold of any random person around and ask him where Krishna was. One time he caught hold of the watchman, because there are certain guards there. He caught hold of a watchman. Of course, if somebody did something like that today, there would be a security alert and all that. But everybody knew Mahaprabhu and his bhava and his mood. So he caught hold of the guard and he said, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna, the Lord of my heart? And so the guard understood his feelings. He was a devotee himself. He said, don't worry, come, I'll take you. So he caught him by the hand and led him to the front of the deities and said, here is the Lord of the heart. And then Mahaprabhu said, thank you, I'm eternally indebted to you. You have granted me the darshan of the Lord of my heart. So in this way, Mahaprabhu would spend a long time gazing at the deity. And then he would chant and dance in front of the deity for Lord Jagannath's pleasure. Then, as time passed, he would wait for this Upala Bhog ceremony. And after the Upala Bhog was over, then he would spend some time and then he would leave. And towards noon, as it approached noon, then he would go to meet Haridas Thakur in Siddhabakula. Siddhabakula is the residence of Haridas Thakur. When Haridas Thakur arrived in Jagannath Puri to live with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally arranged for this place of residence for Haridas Thakur. It was behind Kashi Mishra's house. So there was a nice little bhajan kutir, a little hut that was made there, and Haridas Thakur began to stay there. And then Mahaprabhu told him, my dear Haridas, this is the place for you to stay. Just remain here always and chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And when you're here, you look up at the chakra, the Sudarshan chakra on top of Lord Jagannath's temple, and offer your obeisances to that chakra and chant the holy name. And don't worry about your prasadam. I will arrange for it to reach you every day. Because Haridas Thakur, as we have seen earlier, was so humble because of his origins, he refused to go into the temple of Lord Jagannath. And as we saw in the previous verse, there probably would have been turmoil because many of the priests and others were extremely conservative, very orthodox. So they would appreciate that Haridas Thakur was a very exalted devotee, but a rule is a rule. So they would say, no, you can't go inside because you're born in a Muslim family, so you can't go in. So Haridas Thakur very humbly just accepted that. And Mahaprabhu told him, just wait here. From Siddhabakul, he could see the chakra, the wheel on top of the disc on top of Lord Jagannath's temple. So it is said that taking darshan of Lord Jagannath is the same as taking darshan of the chakra on top of the temple. So there are many people who perhaps don't have time to go into the temple, or they're not allowed to go into the temple. So they just take darshan of the chakra on top of the temple, and it's as good as taking darshan of Lord Jagannath. So Haridas Thakur was satisfied with that. But because he would sit and chant every day 300,000 names of Krishna, so Mahaprabhu wanted to make some arrangement for some shade. So he took one of the toothbrushes of Lord Jagannath. Of course, in the old days, we didn't have in India toothbrushes. You just used a little twig from some trees like the neem tree or so on. And then you just chewed on that, and then you rubbed your teeth with that. So that was like the toothbrush. So till today, Jagannath is woken up in the morning and offered this toothbrush. So there's a certain way you take the edge and you open it out at the end. So there's a little fluffy end. So you can also rub your teeth and your gums with that. So that is offered to Lord Jagannath every morning, even today. And that practice will continue. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took one of those sticks, and he planted in the ground, and suddenly there was a nice big bakula tree that came up, and that offered a lot of shade. So Haridas Thakur would sit under that tree and he would chant the holy names, 300,000 names. So this was a miraculous thing that happened. And because of this tree perfected its life, became a Siddha. So therefore that place is called Siddha Bakula. And this was also the place where Haridas Thakur departed from, gazing at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's face. And everybody remembered the passing away of Bhishma Dev, who gazed at Sri Krishna's lotus face as he departed from this world. So anyway, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every single day, after having had darshan of Lord Jagannath and witnessing the Upalabhog ceremony and chanting and dancing, he would come to Siddha Bakula and he would spend time with Haridas Thakur. When Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami were there, he would spend time with them as well. If anyone was not there, he would spend time with whoever was there. So he would chat with them, and after some time, then he would go to the sea and take his bath. This was his daily practice. Then he would come back to his quarters, the Gambhira, which was in Kashi Mishra's house. And then he would come there and chant on his beads. In the purport, Prabhupada mentioned chanting on the beads. Sometimes there is a bit of a discussion or a debate on whether Mahaprabhu chanted on beads or merely on his fingers. So often he would also chant on his fingers. But in one place Prabhupada mentions beads, so we take it like that. Maybe he chanted both. He chanted sometimes in the fingers and sometimes in the beads. When he went to South India, Nityananda Prabhu mentions that you'll need both hands free, because one hand for chanting and the other hand for counting. So it appears that he would chant on his fingers also. So in any case, so Mahaprabhu would go back to his quarters, the Gambhira, and he would chant the holy names, and then after that he would take prasadam. He was invited by various devotees every day. Invitations were by turn. He would go to the homes of the devotees, take prasadam, and then he would come back. Actually, before he left for prasadam, Advaita Acharya would come and visit him every single day. And then Advaita Acharya would apply sandalwood paste on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body and he would worship him. And then Mahaprabhu, out of humility, would worship Advaita Acharya as well. And this was a transcendental competition that would happen between these two personalities. Advaita Acharya understood that Gauranga Mahaprabhu was his worshipable Lord, so he would worship him. At the same time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would see Advaita Acharya as his superior. He was almost 50 years older than Mahaprabhu. So he would worship him also. And then he would go for prasadam. He would take prasadam and then come back. And post-lunch, it is said it was a long-standing rule that Mahaprabhu would lay down to take some rest. You can just switch off right now and then he can go out. Yes? Yeah, so he would then sleep. He would take rest for a while, and at that time Govinda would massage his feet. So Prabhupada mentioned this was a long-standing rule that was there. And you all know the pastime of how Govinda one time jumped over Mahaprabhu's body to enter, in. Because one time after Mahaprabhu was tired, he came inside the Gambhira and he lay on the floor in such a way that he blocked the entrance. So Govinda, it was his service to massage the lotus feet of the Lord when the Lord was lying down. But now here was a problem, that the Lord was lying right in the doorway, so he could not get into the room unless he jumped over Mahaprabhu's body. Now that is a great offense. We do not even jump over a devotee's body. We do not even step over a non-devotee's body. We do not step over anything. Even any living entity, we don't step over that entity's body because the Lord is in the heart of every living entity. So one has to be a little careful. Sometimes we see in the crowded situations when devotees are offering obeisances, somebody else comes and steps over the body. So one has to be careful about that. So then, what to speak of jumping over the body of the Lord? This was unthinkable. So for a moment, Govinda considered the situation and then realized that he had his service to do. So he jumped over the Lord's body and then started massaging his feet. And Mahaprabhu would lie down and sleep for a particular span of time. It was all fixed. Maybe like half an hour or 40 minutes or something, whatever the time was. And so this time he woke up and he saw Govinda still sitting in the room. So he said, Govinda, you haven't had your prasadam? He said, no. So why not? He said, well, you're lying on the road. I can't cross on the path to the door. And as you're lying here, I can't cross over you and go out to eat my prasadam. Well, then how did you come in? I crossed over your body and came in. So if you crossed over my body when you came in, why don't you cross over my body when you go out? He said, because when I crossed over your body on the way in, I did it for your service. And now for taking prasadam, it's not your service, it's my service. It's for my belly, so I don't think it's important. I can wait. So Mahaprabhu was very pleased to see this mood of of Govinda. So in any case, so he would lie down for a while and then he would wake up. So long as the devotees from Bengal lived in Jagannath Puri, which was for the Chaturmasya period, the 4 months of the monsoon, the rainy season, every evening the devotees, who also would take a nap after their lunch, then in the evening they would gather at Lord Jagannath's temple and have tumultuous kirtan, Harinam Sankirtan. And Mahaprabhu would participate. He would come with them, and every single day they would go around the temple, or sometimes probably around the precincts of the temple, and there would be tumultuous Harinam Sankirtan. And this would happen on a daily basis. And then in the evenings, later, after that, at night, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sit with his intimate associates, Srila Ramananda Rai and Swarup Damodar. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would personally recite verses from his favorite scriptures, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Krishna Karnamrita of Bilva Mangal Thakur, or the Jagannath Vallabha Nataka of Ramananda Rai, or the Gita Govinda of Jayadev Goswami. And he would recite these verses and relish the taste that he would obtain by reciting them and meditating on the meaning of those verses. And he was assisted in this process by Ramananda Rai and Swarup Damodar. Sometimes they would spend the whole night like this, and they didn't know how the time passed. Sometimes Ramananda Rai would recite, sometimes Swarup Damodar, and often Mahaprabhu himself recited these verses. And he experienced intense ecstasy. He experienced a variety of transcendental emotions when he recited these verses. So incidentally, for us as devotees also, it is a very nourishing, spiritually and devotionally nourishing practice to recite verses. Along with our chanting of the holy names, it is a very good practice to include in our daily routine reciting some verses from the scripture and trying to relish those verses by understanding the meaning. For those of you who like to study the verses and know the meaning, you can look at the word-for-word meaning, try to understand it, look at the translation, look at Prabhupada's purport, and then meditate on that as you chant these verses. They could be Bhagavad Gita verses, they could be verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it could be Brahma Samhita verses, it could be the verses from Shikshashtakam. It's a very, very nice practice for devotees to have. So we are following in proper footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So he would relish these verses, and sometimes all night long. And then again the next day he was there, back again in Jagannath temple. So this was Mahaprabhu's routine every single day. He would follow that strict routine. Sometimes in the evenings also he would sit and chat with devotees who would come to visit him, or sometimes in the daytime. Because these devotees would come all the way from Bengal walking, many miles. It would take them many days to walk down. So he would spend time with them. They would come offer their obeisances. He would shower his mercy in personal discussions with them. So this was the way Mahaprabhu spent his day, his typical day. So that is Prabhura Niyama. So as per his usual custom, his habit, he would leave the temple in the morning and come to Siddha Pakula. And that was what is mentioned in the 65th verse. And then he saw this verse, he saw the palm leaf that was tucked into the roof there, the thatched roof, and he read the verse composed by Rupa Goswami. Shloka Podi, and then we come to the verse that's put up on the board. Shloka Podi Ache Prabhu Avishta Hoya. Shloka Podi, he read that verse. Prabhu Avishta Hoya. He became ecstatic. He started experiencing some transcendental emotions after reading what Rupa Goswami had written. And then Rupa Goswami came. Rupa Gosai Asi Pade Dandavata Hona. And Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting purport about what Dandavat really means. Danda, as Prabhupada explains, means a rod or a pole. And when you leave a pole or a rod and drop it, it just falls like that. Generally, when we bend down to offer obeisances, we bend all over, we curve our body, we bend at different places, right? But Dandavat means it just falls like that. Of course, we can't do it. I've seen one or two devotees doing it. They're probably gymnasts or something, or probably adept at some sports. I saw one devotee actually just do that. I said, wow, so we were chanting japa at that time. I said, this is Dandavat, falling like a rod. It's called Ashtanga Pranam because 8 parts of your body that touch the floor. Ladies would generally offer what's called Panchanga Pranam because then the body touches the 5 parts of the body touch the floor. So in Dandavat Pranam, you're supposed to extend your arms completely. There are very interesting variations of the Dandavat Pranam that we see with devotees. Sometimes some devotees do it with one hand extended because the other hand is holding the bead bag, or they do it with both hands under the chest or under the face, or the various permutations and combinations in which they do it. But actually you have to be flat out with your arms extended fully, and not with one arm or not bunched up like that. One time in Vrindavan, I used to always sit in front of Prabhupada to chant. So one devotee came and he offered obeisances, full, admirable obeisance. It was just right. And he lay there for some time and his face was downward, so I couldn't see his face. And I was chanting and chanting and chanting, and after so I noticed he's still there. And I was a little impressed, thinking, wow, this person is really meditating on Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and he's got some, focus there. His resilience, he's focusing his mind. And then I was continuing to chant. I said, I must see who this devotee is. And I was chanting and time is passing by and he wasn't getting up. And after some time I started getting suspicious. But I wasn't the only one. Some others elsewhere were also getting equally suspicious. And finally somebody sitting there couldn't bear the suspense any longer. And he went and shook him up and he had actually fallen asleep on the ground. So that's not the kind of dandavat that we want to do. Of course, he got the benefit of doing that to Srila Prabhupada, but in any case, it's not advisable to fall asleep when performing dandavat. So, Prabhupada gives the explanation, and he says that sometimes we just say dandavat. We don't actually offer obeisances. We meet somebody, say dandavat Prabhu. So we just fold our hands and mentally we offer full obeisances. So in any case, when Rupa Goswami came in, he offered this dandavat pranam, a full obeisance like a rod. And Mahaprabhu's ecstasy, that's very important, because what exactly is the mood that Mahaprabhu is in? Who is Mahaprabhu, by the way? What is his purpose of adventing here? Of course, there are external reasons, which we call exoteric reasons, and there are internal reasons, which are esoteric reasons. Now, the external reasons are three. I think we've just recently, fresh from Gaur Purnima, which just a couple of weeks ago. So the three external reasons for Mahaprabhu's advent are: number one, that he came to inaugurate and propagate the Yuga Dharma. Every Yuga has its own particular Dharma. And in this case, it's the Harinam Sankirtan. So, Mahaprabhu came to propagate the Yuga Dharma, which is Harinam Sankirtan. And it is interesting to note that in every Kali Yuga, the Yuga avatar is always yellow or golden in color. And since the function of the Yuga avatar is to establish the Yuga Dharma, so every incarnation who appears as a Yuga avatar and is yellow or golden complexion in Kali Yuga also spreads the Harinam Sankirtan movement. So also did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he fulfilled this first purpose, which is his external purpose, the first external purpose. But that was not enough. Mahaprabhu was special because he is directly Krishna. He is not an expansion of Krishna, like are the other forms of the Lord, like Narasimha, Lord Ramachandra, Matsya, Kurma, etc. So he is called Avatari Krishna. So as Avatari Krishna, he had come in a very special way to give something special that no other incarnation had given earlier. Anarpita charim chirat karunaya vatirna kalau samarpayitu munnatojvala rasam svabhakti shriyam harihi purata sundara tyuti kadamba sandipitaha sadya hridaya kandaraspurutu va shachinandanaha. So Kaviraj Goswami explains that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that Krishna who has come with the mood and the complexion of Srimati Radharani to give to the world what no other incarnation had given, or something that Krishna had not given for a long, long time. And that something was very special. It was the Unnata Ujjvala Rasa, that very exalted transcendental mellow of the conjugal bhava. Kaviraj Goswami also explains the top four rasas, that is the Madhurya ras, the Vatsalya ras, the Sakhya ras, and the Dasya ras. So Mahaprabhu came to give these four in the rasa or the mellow of Vrindavan, and especially the Madhurya ras. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed the first function, but he gave the second external purpose for Mahaprabhu's coming was that not only was he going to do Harinam Sankirtan and inaugurate the Yuga Dharma, But through the Harinam Sankirtan, he was going to give something that the earlier incarnations had not given. And that was the mood of Vrindavan, the Vraja Bhava. Love of Krishna in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. Now the other yellow or golden colored incarnations of the Lord, the Yuga avatars who come in every other Kali Yuga, they give Vaikuntha Prema through the Harinam Sankirtan. They also do the holy chanting of the holy names of the Lord, but through that Harinam Sankirtan, one obtains love for the Lord in the bhava or the mood of Vaikuntha. That love which is tinged by a feeling of awe and reverence, and that weakens the sweetness of the devotion compared to the devotion of the residents of Vrindavan. So this was a second very special purpose. And the third was, of course, he came in response to the pleas of his devotees like Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur, who petitioned the Lord to advent himself personally. So this is the external aspect of the Lord's appearance. So not only, why is it called external? Because even though Mahaprabhu came to give the love of Vrindavan to one and all, the internal reasons explain something much deeper. And Kaviraj Goswami explains this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that internal reasons are also threefold. The first one is Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrisho Vana Yaiva. Pranaya means love. Mahima means glories. Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima. The glory of the love of Srimati Radharani. Kidrisha, what is it like? So Mahaprabhu advented to find out the glories of Srimati Radharani's love for him. So that was the first internal reason for Mahaprabhu's advent. The second reason was Swadhyo Yenadbhuta Madhurima Kidrisho Va Madhya. Madhya means of my own, Krishna is thinking. This is Krishna speaking. Adbhuta Madhurima Madhya. Adbhuta means extraordinary. Madhurima means the sweetness. Madhya means of myself. So Krishna is a little puzzled, even bewildered about his own transcendental sweetness. And he wants to know, what are those transcendentally sweet qualities that I have which are relished, aswadhya, by Srimati Radharani? So I want to know myself better. So it's not just that we here in the material world have to know who am I, but even Krishna wants to know who he is in detail. Such are the wonderfully transcendental qualities of Mahaprabhu, of Krishna, that even he is not able to fathom how sweet his qualities are. But those qualities are being relished by Srimati Radharani. So, by coming as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna wants to understand himself better. So he wants to understand the glories of Srimati Radharani's love for him, and then he also wants to understand himself better, especially his sweetness. Saukhyam chasya mad anubhavataha kidrisho vamadi kidrisho veti lobhad. So he wants to also know Saukhyam, what is that happiness that Srimati Radharani feels in her love for Krishna, Krishna. So this is something that is puzzling Krishna himself. I'm experiencing happiness in receiving love from my devotees and in serving them, but it appears that my devotees enjoy greater happiness in loving me and serving me. So I also want to experience that happiness. Saukhyam chasya mad anubhavataha. So when they love me, when they experience me and love for me, they feel a certain saukyam, a certain happiness. So veti lobhat, so I am very greedy to understand that. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in this mood for this purpose. Tad bhavadhya. Adhya means endowed. So endowed with this bhava, samajani shachigarbha sindhau harinduhu. So endowed with this mood, Krishna appeared, took birth, samajani, shachigarbha, in the womb of Sachimata. Sindhau harinduhu. Sindhau means in the ocean. Hari is the Supreme Lord, and Indu means the moon. So Krishna appeared in the womb or through the womb of Shachi Devi, just as the moon appears in the ocean. It only appears that the moon is coming from the ocean, but actually the moon has its own existence. Similarly, Krishna has his own existence in the spiritual world. It only appears that he appears through the womb of Sachimata as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is the internal mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wants to relish the specific mood of Srimati Radharani amongst all the Brajabasis and amongst all the gopis, and even more specifically, the Acharyas explain, he embodies the mood that Uddhava found Srimati Radharani in when he went to console the Brajabasis upon the order of Krishna in Mathura. So when Uddhava came there, he was perplexed. He had never seen anything like this. So this specifically was the mood that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu adopted. So whenever he used to read these verses, and whenever he saw Jagannath, this mood would come to the surface and it would just go beyond control. And all these ecstatic symptoms would be visible. And sometimes he would be hard put to control those emotions. Srila Kaviraj Goswami also mentions that at the time when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in front of Jagannath, or he would chant, he would also be in the mood of the gopis in Kurukshetra when they wanted Krishna to come back to Vrindavan rather than to go back to Dwarka. So when he came there, he would sometimes see, he would be in this mood of wanting to bring Krishna back to Jagannath, to Vrindavan. So this was the ecstatic kind of emotion that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experienced when he read Srila Rupa Goswami's verse. And a couple of verses later, this verse composed by Rupa Goswami will appear. So whoever gives that class will then explain that verse. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the wonderful class. You're telling us about the pastime between Mahaprabhu and Govinda, and that Govinda could understand that in order for him to perform his service, he needs to transgress etiquette and step over Mahaprabhu. And then afterwards he saw that actually for him to take prasad, it's not appropriate for him to step over Mahaprabhu. And so like that in our own spiritual practice, how do we sort of sometimes make that decision of whether we should, in order to do our service, perhaps bend the rules a little bit?
Okay, so the question for the benefit of those who are hearing on the internet is, just as Govinda bent the rules by stepping over Mahaprabhu's body in order to do his service, so to what extent are we justified in bending the rules to do our service? Well, it depends. It depends what service you're doing. It depends on the urgency or the nature of the service. It also depends on what kind of rules you're planning to bend. And sometimes it may be justified to bend a small rule a little bit, but it may not be justified to bend another rule, which may be important to maintain even in that circumstance. So that would require some thoughtful deliberation. It's not something that can be done whimsically. One has to thoughtfully do that, if at all it is required to be done. Okay, any other question or comment? Yes. Is there a mic here, by the way?
Thank you. One of Krishna's name is Triyuga. And
Is?
Triyuga.
Triyuga.
As much as I could remember, if it's properly, it's explained that he appears in Triyuga and not in Kali Yuga. And then explanation is that Krishna Chaitanya was Chana avatar, so okay, he appeared. But what about, you just said that he appears every Kali Yuga, so what's then the meaning of Triyuga name? I cannot, it looks to me a little confusing.
No. The incarnations come in every yuga. There is no yuga that doesn't have any incarnation. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically is the hidden avatar, Channa avatar, as you said. But the Yuga avatar, the Bhagavatam is very clear. In each avatar, in each Yuga, the Yuga avatar has a specific color. Yes? White, red, black and golden. So these are the 4 colors of the 4 Yuga avatars in that order. So definitely the Bhagavatam is very clear about that. As far as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's very special because he's Krishna himself. Krishna doesn't appear himself in every age. He comes, his expansions appear. But he or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appear only once in a day of Brahma. Okay? Any other? Yes, there's a mic.
I've heard many devotees say that we should not step on grass.
Step on grass?
Yeah, because you mentioned that we should not step on other living entities. So many devotees say that we should not walk on grass.
Well, perhaps that's carrying it a bit far. Really, it's very hard to do without it. In that sense, even when you walk in the street, there are so many insects and germs that we kill. Even in breathing, there are so many insects we kill. So just to survive, we have to kill so many insects. Unknowingly, we kill so many. We have to try to minimize it, as we see in the story of Mrigari. He gently brushed aside the ants so he wouldn't step on them. So we have to be cautious, but we can't be carrying these things too far as well. Otherwise, we just can't function in this world. Yes? Any other questions? Yes. There's one question there, yeah.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. You kindly mentioned that Lord Chaitanya appeared to propagate the chanting of the holy name, Yuga Dharma. And I would like to understand, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, amongst all the yajnas, chanting of the holy name is the topmost. So is chanting of the holy name, Sankirtan, eternal thing, although it is considered Yuga Dharma for this Kali Yuga?
Oh yes, it is definitely eternal. It's not that people in early ages were prohibited to chant the holy names, or it's not that they didn't do it. Yes? But it's just that it's something very easy to do. Anyone can do it. You don't require us to do a lot of austerity and so on. In earlier ages, the method of obtaining self-realization or God realization was given according to the level of their capabilities and their qualification. So just as a 10th grade student would have a higher grade of exam than a 5th grade student, so those living in Satyuga would have to be given very tough processes to follow in keeping with their own qualifications. So therefore they had to meditate and perform this for 70,000 years or so on, whatever. So, but in Kali Yuga, we can't do all of those things that were done by people in the early ages. So Krishna very kindly has given us the simplest process. So that's the reason. But it's not that the holy name, the chanting was not valid in early ages. It definitely was. It's an eternal principle. Okay? One question there, I think.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful class. You mentioned in the class earlier on that the Pandits at Lord Jagannath, they would not allow any of the low-class people or Muslims to enter the temple. But as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was specifically there to deliver all the problem conditions laws, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did he not, was there a particular reason why he did not tell the Pandits to allow everybody to come into the temple?
Yes, that's the question devotees ask many times. Why didn't, he's the Supreme Lord, why didn't he just tell them, just change it all, allow everybody in, or devotees? Well, you see, he could have changed it even before adventing as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the Lord, he can do anything. Jagannath could have done it. Right? The Lord himself could have done it. It doesn't need Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come to change the system. The Lord himself can appear in the priest's dream and say, or the king's dream and say, yes, do it now. So apparently there's some transcendental reason for it. Perhaps the Lord is waiting for our generations to do it, to slowly preach and preach to the Pandas over time so that they'll understand and then they'll say, okay, yeah, actually let's change it. For some transcendental reason, Jagannath is not allowing that to happen. As we saw in the previous verse, Mahaprabhu and these three great personalities, Mahaprabhu kind of didn't approve of what was it, but he didn't interfere in that. Because, as Kaviraj Goswami says, he didn't want turmoil. Because some of the priests would have been very obstinate and very vigorous in their reactions. And after all, Mahaprabhu, remember, had taken sannyas because there was resistance to his teachings. His students, they were aghast when he was chanting the name of the gopis. And they started criticizing him. So Mahaprabhu didn't want that to happen. He said, I have advented here to give mercy to these people. And if they start criticizing me, then how will they receive my mercy? So therefore he decided to take sannyas. So he was he was very careful that he shouldn't do something which will make others criticize him. And then that will spoil the whole mission. So everything has its time frame, So things evolve in the Lord's transcendental plan. So definitely Mahaprabhu didn't approve of it, Prabhupada didn't approve of it. And naturally we also hope and pray that the time will come very quickly when all devotees, regardless of their birth, will be able to enter Lord Jagannath's temple. The Pandas are slowly changing. Slowly, some of them, especially the newer generations who understand, who are in touch with the world outside, they're changing. But the older ones, they're living in their closed world from childhood. They don't have exposure to the world outside. They don't understand the deeper aspects of the philosophy sometimes, so they don't see that. The reason this restriction was there was because in the olden days, you had the Muslim conquerors who came on numerous occasions, and they tried to destroy the temple, they tried to destroy deities. Iconoclasts like this were there all over in India. And of course, this rule was made by Jagannath even before that. But gradually with time, we hope and pray that this will change. I think it's only a matter of time now, maybe another generation or two, and we should see that happening. Yes, Govinda. One last question. Anything on the ladies' side, by the way? Yeah, we'll come back to you after this question.
I've heard it said, and I just wonder what you think, that somebody say that the Kali Yuga avatar in general is of blackish complexion, whereas a lot of the time it's the golden complexion. Did you mention that it's always young? I'm seeing there's different people say different things.
Yeah, this is the order in which, the sequence in which they appear. White, red, black, and yellow. So, in the verse, in the Bhagavatam, as said by Garga Muni, there are only 3 mentioned in that sequence: white, red, and yellow. And then he says, and now he has appeared with a blackish. So that indicates that for Dwapara it is black, and for Kali it is yellow or golden. Okay? Yes, one question here, then ladies' side. Final question. Sorry, it's 9 o'clock.
Okay, thank you for the class. I was wondering, if Krishna is in the heart of all living beings, then how can he not feel what his devotees in Radharani feels?
Okay. Question is, if Krishna is in everybody's heart, then how can he not understand what Srimati Radharani is feeling? Well, you see, Krishna is in everybody's heart in the material world as the super soul. Because here the body is distinct from the soul. So Paramatma exists only in the material world. In the spiritual world, they are anyway conscious of Krishna all the time. So there's no need for the Lord to be present in that way, in the way that He's present here. Okay? And still, this is a transcendental mystery. How is it that the all-knowing Supreme Lord doesn't know something? The mysteries of rasa are thus found. So we just accept it like that. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.